Silent Hill 3, the third installment in the critically acclaimed horror franchise Silent Hill. This one came out for the PS2 in 2003. Like Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3 actually does not continue the story of its predecessor, but instead follows up on the story of Harry Mason from Silent Hill 1. You'll play as his daughter Heather Mason as she experiences the same horrors of Silent Hill that her father did. So does Silent Hill 3 live up to the horror standards that the franchise has set so far? Let's turn off the lights and find out.
Just like the previous game, Silent Hill 3 begins with an introduction sequence accompanied by the game's theme. I really don't think this one is nearly as good as the last two games. While the first two games had original CG scenes along with scenes from the game, this one just grabs random cutscenes from the game and throws them all together. This doesn't really work well because A, it's lazier to do, and B, a lot of the scenes are of the characters just talking, and in an introduction sequence that has the audio muted in favor of a song, it just doesn't work. The title screen is what you'd expect by now. Nothing super great looking, but it gets the job done. Right from the get-go, you'll find yourself in a monster-infested amusement park. You'll also start the game with the majority of the weapons already unlocked. This is actually just a short dream sequence that helps you get the hang of the controls and mechanics before you actually get started. Heather wakes up in a mall, realizing that it was just a nightmare. She calls her dad, Harry, the protagonist from the first game, telling him that she'll be coming home soon. It's not long before she finds herself being pestered by a private detective named Douglas, who Heather doesn't want anything to do with. Heather sneaks out of a bathroom window and decides to cut through the closed-down mall in order to avoid him. Soon enough, though, Heather bumps into one of the monsters from her nightmare and fires at it with a gun that just happens to be conveniently placed on the floor of this clothing outlet.
Yep, that's right. You can't even dream about Silent Hill without things getting messed up.
Control has been upgraded even more since Silent Hill 2. Strafing feels very natural, and transitioning from a strafe to a run is now as smooth as butter. Mobility overall is greatly enhanced, making it easier to move while wielding or swinging a weapon. This makes the combat a lot easier to get a hang of. You're also given a block button, which adds further depth to the combat. To compensate, Silent Hill 3 sports way more and way tougher enemies than the past two games. Many times you're not even going to want to bother fighting due to the size or amount of enemies plaguing a certain area. Especially the dogs, god damn. I'm going to tell you right now, unless you're really careful, these dogs are gonna mess you up. Every time I hear that growl or the sound of them chomping down on something's carcass, I immediately grow uneasy because I know there's a good chance I'm gonna take some damage. Trying to fight with these things is not a good option, as they often come in packs of 3 or more, making it impossible to take them out without losing a great deal of health. You are able to avoid them by finding beef jerky and laying it down as bait, which will distract them for a short time. It's a nice little way to add some more depth to the Silent Hill formula. The monsters in Silent Hill 3 are really creepy and exceptionally well designed. Although I couldn't really take the closers seriously after I drew this comparison. The nurses make a return, but instead of being sexualized, their appearance is altered to represent a childish or clown-like doll. It's great to see that they've kept the staple enemy, but modified it to stay relevant to the story. There's also a little more variety to the weapons this time. Instead of finding the pipe and the better pipe, making the previous pipe useless, the better weapons will have slightly shorter range and different stopping power. For example, the pipe is 3 feet long and will do a better job of stunning enemies, but the katana you'll find later is only 2 feet long but will do more damage along with being able to be swung in much greater succession. This way, the older weapons don't become obsolete once you obtain new ones. This adds a whole new level to the decision making, as certain weapons may be better for certain combat situations. The pistol and shotgun both return, but this time the rifle is replaced with an Uzi, which will do a lot of damage, but there's hardly any ammo for it in the entire game. It's also really hard to aim at the enemy with, so it's really not recommended to use on anything other than a boss fight. There's also a mace which will do massive damage at the cost of a slow attack speed, and a stun gun that is ridiculously helpful. It'll render any enemy completely motionless just long enough to let you wail on them enough times to either kill or do tons of damage to them. It's really helpful for taking out the stronger enemies that have more health without using up any of your valuable ammunition. The equipment screen is also much more organized in Silent Hill 3, having all of your items split into 3 categories. One for weapons, one for ammo and consumables, and one last one for key items. It makes looking for specific things in your inventory much less taxing. After navigating through the mall, Heather will bump into a woman named Claudia Wolf.
Yeah, not Dahlia. Claudia.
Heather lashes out at Claudia, blaming her for the warped reality, while Claudia spelled some occult nonsense about Heather being needed for some ritual or something like that. I should probably mention now that the voice acting in this game is actually pretty solid. Both Claudia and Heather's voice actors do a really good job. There's a few sour lines here and there that just sound like they were read right off the script with no context, but they're infrequent enough to not take away from the overall quality. Douglas's voice, however, does not sound fitting at all.
Calm down. If it'll make you feel better, I will.
The tone the actor uses doesn't sound right in the slightest, and most of his lines aren't delivered very well. It often sounds like the voice actor read the lines without knowing the context or what the other characters were saying to him. Though I am glad for once the main character is actually well voiced. Heather is a pretty well-developed character, too. There's a lot of symbolism in the game to emphasize how she is just a kid, and the way the game's written when you examine things really brings out her personality, instead of just giving a bland description like Harry or James did. I know that in the past 2 games I created a generic character on purpose to help the player project themselves into the game, but I'm still glad they tried to have some real character development this time around. And what do you know, they did a pretty good job. Silent Hill 3's story continues that of Silent Hill 1. Remember that baby the Incubus handed Harry? That baby grew up to be Heather, which is the character we play as in this game. This game does a way better job of explaining just what the hell was going on in Silent Hill 1. It turns out that Dahlia tried to get her daughter to give birth to the god, which is why she wouldn't die in the hospital for so many years, as she was carrying God in her womb. The process failing resulted in her being split into 2 entities, Alessa, the spirit who went on to haunt Silent Hill, and Cheryl, who Harry then found and adopted. Heather is Alessa and Cheryl combined together once again. Because of this though, Heather will sometimes faintly remember things that Alessa experienced, like being bullied in school and being in the hospital. The plot surrounding Heather and how she used to be Alessa is all really interesting.
Alessa, your true self. But I am Alessa.
There's a lot more levels to explore this time around. You'll start off with the mall, followed by the subway station, sewer, office building, apartment building, hospital, amusement park, and finally, the monastery. You'll no longer explore the open town between levels, as the game doesn't actually end up in Silent Hill until the final stretch of the game. Instead, the levels are all designed to flow into each other, meaning no more senseless running around the town to tediously look for items. I'm actually pretty glad they got rid of this, especially after that bit where you have to run to the other side of town and then back in Silent Hill 2. There is one bit where you'll explore Silent Hill, but the area is very confined and visibility is ridiculously low. At least 5 times as before. This encourages you just to get to the next level instead of exploring. While I am disappointed you can't really explore the town of this game, it seems to fit Silent Hill's 3 structure well enough. The game's visuals are also really well done. Everything has that distinct, rusted, disgusting look that makes you want to get a tetanus shot just after looking at the place. So far, I would say Silent Hill 3 has definitely the best atmosphere, and it creates some truly terrifying moments.
And I mean damn terrifying. This game's really frickin' scary. There's a really good number of damn good scares in this game, especially the mannequin scene and the mirror scene. And if you're a fan of Silent Hill, you know damn well what I'm talking about.
When you're in the office building, you'll run into a character named Vincent. He also doesn't really have a good voice actor.
So Harry didn't tell you anything. Heather, go ahead and kill this crazy bitch. Bitch!
He's constantly trying to ruin Claudia's plot, but he still comes off as crazy as he does worship the same demonic god that Claudia does. You're never entirely sure if you can trust him or not, so it's really unsettling how unsure you are to feel about him. Especially after he says this line, and you have no clue whether or not he's being serious.
You're the worst person in this room. You feel excited when you step on them and snuff out their lives.
Are you talking about the monsters?
They look like monsters to you?
Shit. I don't even know how to feel about that one.
Silent Hill 3 has puzzles returning in full force, and some of them are really damn cool. My favorite being the one where you have to interpret numbers printed on bodies in a crematorium as a code. I also should mention that the game's hard puzzle difficulty is hard as shit, but even still, I'd say Silent Hill 3 does puzzles even better than 2 did. It turns out that Douglas was hired by Claudia to track Heather down so she could finish the job Dahlia started, attempting to get Heather to birth a god.
Okay, how many goddamn times are they gonna say the word God in this game? I swear it's over 40 times.
God. 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 God.
God, God. God, God, God.
of God's...
God! God!
God is going to save you? Ha!
You're not even good enough to be my... I'll make you eat those words.
God! 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 God!
God.
God!
God.
God!
God.
God! God!
God. God.
God!
God's God.
God! 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 God!
How long is this gonna go on?
After learning just what's going on, Douglas agrees to help Heather take down Claudia. In the end, Heather uses the Aglaophatus to stop the birthing process and vomits up the fetus of the unborn god. Claudia, hell-bent on making this thing live, swallows the fetus, turning her into a total monster. Heather defeats the monster and returns to Douglas after everything's okay. There's only one ending you can get in your first playthrough. However, there are 2 additional endings you can unlock with multiple playthroughs. Just like the previous games, you'll unlock extra weapons after beating it, one of which is literally a lightsaber. It says beam saber, but nah, it's a lightsaber. You will also unlock As always, Silent Hill 3's soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. Funny enough, Silent Hill 3 includes a CD with the soundtrack on it. The music in Silent Hill 3 is kind of a mix between Silent Hill 1's music and Silent Hill 2's music. While Silent Hill just had frightening noises music, and 2 had a lot of hollow sound and rugged guitar, Silent Hill 3 mixes the best of both, all the while incorporating its own style into it. The guitar pieces all have a very juvenile rock feel to them, which is very fitting to Heather's tough teen attitude. I'd say overall, the story's not bad. It definitely does a great job of making sense of Silent Hill 1's story. The symbolism is all still there too, representing Heather as a child. This could be interpreted as either how Heather is still a kid and has to be brave despite that, or how she had a torturous childhood when she was Alessa. It's not quite as strong or clever as 2's symbolism, but it's still there and is very welcome. There's also a pretty important character called Valtiel, who plays a pretty big role in the game's symbolic storytelling. I guess you could say he's kinda like Silent Hill 3's equivalent of Pyramid Head, though you never have any direct confrontations with him. You'll see him just about every time you transfer over from the real world to the other world. Supposedly, he's God's servant sent to watch over Heather to assure that she does give birth to God. I don't really have that much to say about him, but I had to at least mention him due to his behind-the-scenes kind of importance.
So in the end, is Silent Hill 3 a good game? Hell yeah, it is. It takes every gameplay aspect of Silent Hill 2 and further improves on it. It's got better puzzles, more levels, and cuts out a lot of the crap I didn't like about Silent Hill 2. The story isn't quite as good, and it's not really as clever in how it presents itself, but at least the game's a lot scarier and has a lot of really good scares. If only they made a sequel that managed to be really scary and had a really good story.
Hello and welcome to the credits card. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Nitro Rad all the way through. If you missed my last episode on Silent Hill 2, you can watch that by clicking the video on the left. If you want to watch the next video on Silent Hill 4, feel free to click that video on the right. I'd really appreciate if you could maybe share this video with your friends on Facebook or Twitter or show people. That would be really cool if you guys could do that. Also, if you're a user of Facebook, don't forget to like my Facebook page. The link is down in the description below. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, you could always change that and click that subscribe button if you want to see more Nitro Rad videos in the future. So I guess I'll see you next time with Silent Hill 4, The Room. Take care, guys.
Instead, Silent Hill 3 follows up on the story of Harry Mason from Silent Hill 1.